Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Phil, and I'm on the team here at Freckle Education. And today I'm really excited to dig in and look at kind of the different reports and data that are available to you as a teacher when you're using Freckle. And kind of everything that we look at today, I want you to kind of look at with the lens of how can I use this to help reach my students at the level that's best for them and help them grow? Because certainly that's what we're doing here at Freckle. It's the thing that we're really passionate about is we know that in every classroom, no matter what grade you teach, you're going to have students at a wide variety of levels. And so the reports and data that we provide are meant to help you make sure that you're make it easier for you to reach all of those different students at their level. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I haven't even properly introduced myself, so let me do this first. So my name is Phil, and I'm on the team here at Freckle. I used to be a fifth grade teacher. In fact, that's not uncommon for all of us here at Freckle. In fact, most of the people that work here are former teachers. The main reason why I'm showing you this slide is so that you have my email address, which is there at the bottom of the screen. It's just phil@freckle.com. So I'm going to save time at the end today to answer any questions that come up. But really, if you're anything like me, you're going to think of your best questions a few days down the road, or maybe even a few months down the road. I tend to always think of my best questions when I'm not trying to think of questions. And so if that's you too, just shoot me an email. I would always love to help. Really working with teachers and educators of all sorts is the favorite thing for me about being here at Freckle. So I'd be honored if you sent me an email. So don't hold back any questions that you have. In today's training, as you guessed, with it being called reports and data, we're going to really dig in to Freckle and look at the different reports that are available and look at the data that's available. My goal is that at the end of this kind of 30 minutes, you will feel really confident and feel like you know where to go in Freckle to find the pieces of information that you want to know. So obviously, we're not going to be able to cover every single little thing that Freckle has to offer. That would take probably a half day or a day. But at the end of this 30 minutes, you should know that I remember Phil showed me that thing where I can go to look up this thing. That's kind of my hope for the end of this, and so you can hold me accountable to that by the time that we're done today. But I also wanted to just give you the world's fastest overview of Freckle. Um, if you've been to one of our other trainings, you have probably seen this, but I know that for me, it's really important. And one of the things that I love about working here is just our mission and kind of what we do more broadly. So I wanted to start with that, and then I promise we will get into the nitty gritty in just a few minutes here. But at Freckle, our mission is to ensure that every student gets a world-class education. It's one of those things that's really easy to say, and then obviously, as all of you know, it's really hard to actually do. But that's what drives us. That's what we're working on. And so far, we're really proud to have over 10,000 districts, over 10 million students, and over 550,000 teachers. We feel really honored by that to be using Freckle. Um, and the way that we think we're going to ensure every student gets a world-class education is through empowering our teachers to reach their students at the level that's best for them. As I mentioned early on, that is what we're really passionate about. And we know that teachers are looking to do this already or are doing it already. But since so many of us were former teachers, we also know just how challenging and time consuming it is when you realistically want to reach every student at their level. It can be tough. So our job and what we're hoping to help you with is to make that a little bit easier for you. And today, when we're looking at the reports, I'm going to be thinking about them from that lens of like, how do we make it easier for you to reach your students at their level? So when you're using Freckle, your students are always going to work at their level in math, ELA, social studies, and science. It's going to be really easy for you to track their student and classroom level progress. It's a lot of what we'll look at today. And administrators can view performance across classrooms or across entire districts. And just in case you are the only teacher in your school using Freckle, which I hope is not the case, I want you to know that that you're in good hands. So Freckle is ranked #1 by teachers on the Common Sense website. We actually have a perfect 5-star teacher rating. And as I mentioned earlier, there are over 550,000 teachers from all over the country who are using and loving Freckle. So just know that you're in good company, and I promise we will take really good care of you. And if you ever have any questions, if you are new, just email us or reach out. Please don't be bashful. And lastly, before we jump into the actual data and reports inside Freckle, I wanted you to know that Freckle's a one-stop shop for all of your kind of curriculum classroom needs, I should say. So we have a lot of great tools across math, ELA, social studies, and science. A lot of what we're going to focus on today is math and ELA, but I really recommend checking out kind of the trainings that we do on social studies and science. I think that you'll really like those too, if those are subjects that you teach. Those are probably my personal favorite parts about Freckle, which is always dangerous to say. I don't think you're supposed to choose favorites, but I do really enjoy those parts. Okay, so enough of that overview of Freckle. Let's jump in and let's get into it. Let's look at the data and reports that we can look at. So let's get rid of this presentation. We do not need you presentation. We're going to jump right into Freckle, and for the rest of the training, we're just going to live in here together. Then we're going to come back at the end for some questions and answers. So hopefully this all looks familiar to you. This is the Freckle teacher dashboard. The place that I want to start when looking at data and reports is the activity feed. This, as soon as you're kind of up and running with Freckle, this will be your home screen, and this is where you'll always start your day with. And there are a few things here that make this report really helpful. So this is a great way for you to see, kind of at a glance, how are my students doing, or what are my students doing? You can answer both of those. Today, this week, this month. Most often, you'll probably use this to see what your students are doing today or this week. But enough kind of talking. Let me just show you what this looks like. It's really powerful. So here you can filter by your class. So if you have multiple classes in Freckle, you can look at one class at a time. You can filter by time period. Again, I would say that kind of the most common here, or if you just want to look at today. So say that you assign some work to your class, or you have your students practicing on Freckle right now, and you want to know what they're doing and how they're doing, then you'd want to have that toggled to today. Just so we can see more data, I'm going to have this set to maybe the last 3 months for us just now. And then you can filter by subject, and you can filter by all the different parts of Freckle here. So you can have this report show you all of the things that they could possibly be working on, or you could have it filtered down to just one specific thing. So in this case, for our example here, I'm going to be most interested in math. And so I'm going to toggle off this ELA. And in fact, I'm just going to want to look at how my students are doing with their adaptive practice. So here's a little trick. You can click this only button, and it will only select adaptive practice and unselect everything else. And so here we can look at my report, and at a glance, you can see that Freckle is giving me really helpful information. It's letting me know that in the last 3 months, Millard has answered the most correct questions, 329 of 424. Indira has answered the least correct questions at 3 of 19. Millard has also practiced the most, so go Millard, showing up at the top of the board for 2 of these. And our highest accuracy is James Buchanan, who has great accuracy for this time period. So at a glance, I already have kind of this snapshot of information as a teacher. But then I can scroll down to the actual activity feed, and I can filter this information in whatever way is going to be most helpful to me. So maybe I want to just kind of toggle this by accuracy here, or look at my different scores here. Maybe I want to toggle by time practice. So you can do that for all of these. And then you can really dig in. So maybe I'm going to filter, and I want to see my students who are kind of struggling. So I see here that I have 12% accuracy for Indira. And I can click on this little arrow, and I can dive in for a more detailed look. So I can see everything that they've been up to, and what level they've been practicing at, what type of practice they've been doing. how much time they've spent, how many questions they've answered, and how many they've gotten correct. And you can see, I promise I didn't plan this. I didn't know who I was going to click on. I'm not nearly that prepared. But what we can see here, which is really interesting, is I bet the reason why this student is struggling, it would seem to be that they're not giving it an honest effort. And obviously I don't know the student, it's a fake student. But the reason why I say that is I can see that they've answered all of these questions, and yet they've only spent, a minute or a minute and a half. So they answered 10 questions in a minute and a half and got 90%. Wow, that's great. But here they did 10 questions in a minute and got 0%. As a former 5th grade teacher, I certainly would expect 10 questions to take a lot more than a minute. And that's why I indicated maybe they're rushing through it. They didn't give it their best effort. They were distracted. Who knows what's going on there? But at a glance, I can kind of see that is a good high likelihood of what can be going on. So I hope you can see kind of just the power of the activity feed. Let's switch it just to today, which is kind of the most common way that you'd use it. You can easily see what all of your students have been up to in that day if you have them practicing in Freckle. The next area that I want to show you is how you can see what your students have been doing on the assignments that you've sent them. So if you have not seen assignments yet, it's a really powerful part of Freckle, and a lot of our teachers especially use them in math and ELA. And when using them in math, they're really powerful because you can assign specific standards to your students. So say that you taught a lesson on triangles, you can assign that standard to your students and right away you'll know how they did. So let's look at what that report would look like. So anything about assignments is going to be here in this assignment section. Great. And then here we have our different tabs where you could see the assignments that you've already sent out there. And you could toggle by incomplete, or you can look at just the complete ones. I'm going to look at the incomplete ones too. And actually, I'm going to look at complete just to make our data a little bit easier. So here I can see, here was a benchmark assessment I assigned to my class. I can see that everyone completed it. And here's how I can see how they did. Same with this adaptive practice assignment. I can click here, can see my 2 students completed it here, and I can see how they did, and I can go for more information. So that's the way just to see at a glance how your students are completing their assignments. So those are the 2 probably ways that I would recommend for at a glance information. So you have your activity feed for just at a glance, what are my students up to today and this week, and getting some nice highlighted information at the top. And then at a glance, how did my students do with the assignments that I just assigned across math, ELA, social studies, or science? And then each subject inside Freckle also has reports that are specific to those subjects. And so I want to show you a few of the more popular ones there. So if I look at math and then hop down to reports here on the left, here are the different math reports that are available to me as a teacher. First, let's look at this report cards report. So this report is really powerful, and it's going to give you a lot of detail on how each student in your class is doing across all of the different math domains. This is also the best report that I can think of for parent-teacher conferences, or just when you're looking to send information home to parents for your students and how they're performing. It gives a really nice snapshot for every student. So let's look here, and I can see all of my students, and let's just pick one together. I don't have one in mind. Maybe let's look at Millard, and let's look at Millard's report card. Here you go. So we can see Millard's report card here. If you're using our school edition, then you can toggle and look at different time periods, which is really helpful. If you're on our free teacher edition, I believe you can look at 1 week at a time. But for now, we're looking at this year, so July to August 13th. So there hasn't been, the school year is brand new at this point, so there hasn't been a ton of time to show growth here yet. But We can see at a glance how Millard is doing for each domain. And that's what these represent, these dots here. So we can see the grade level per domain that they've practiced in. And then over time, this will automatically track for them. So they will turn from dots into lines. And hopefully, if all goes according to plan, lines that are going up and to the right to show that our students are improving. Here's where you can see how many adaptive levels they've passed or maybe gone backwards in. Just at a glance, you can see their starting level and their latest level. You can see where they're spending their time in Freckle just by hovering over the different areas here. You can see how many questions they've answered and which domains are they spending most of their time and which domains are they doing best. And then if you toggle to, you can't do it for the this year view, but on certain time periods, you can see exactly what standards they've looked at. But there's actually another report that I would recommend for that. So I'll show you that in a bit. And then you can see how they've done on all of their assignments. So again, a really detailed snapshot for every student. And it's really easy to share this or print it out if you want to give to your students to send home. And when you do that, what you'll see is it gives a nice kind of, in this case, is this a 1.5 to 2 page summary that's going to give a higher level overview for parents. So they absolutely love this. A few other things I want to point out here. You might have noticed this on your own when I was clicking around, but these reports are made to be very actionable for you. So as you can see, in just about every report, there's a link that lets you easily assign work in this area to this student. So here you can see it obviously on this first page. And then if we go to adaptive levels passed, so here we can see my student has kind of gone backwards a little bit in geometry. And so I can click this button and easily assign them some geometry work. Same goes for kind of all of these. I can see that my student, what is this one? They haven't really practiced exponential functions. I guess I can't really blame them too much for that. But if I wanted to, I could just come in here and hit assign under exponential functions and it will assign it to them. And you'll see that that is repeated throughout kind of all of our reports because we not only want to show you the data, but we want to make it really easy for you to act on that data. Again, we know that you're already, frankly, you're swamped. You're spending so much time outside of the classroom, and we know that teaching is an all-encompassing, really like heartwarming profession, but really difficult. And we want to make it as easy as we can for you to use the data in the best way possible. So here, let's jump out of the report cards and let's look at one of the other reports here. Let's look at performance by standard. This is one of our teacher favorites because it makes it really easy for you to see how all of your students are doing on a given standard, which is very, very helpful. So let's look at this. Right now I'm looking at kind of all key concepts and I'm looking at the current month. And you could always toggle these if you're on our school edition. Okay. And what I'm looking for here as a teacher, so maybe I have a specific standard that I taught and I just want to jump in and see how my students are doing. Or maybe I'm just looking for areas that my students are doing really strong or areas where they're struggling. So one thing that I can see here at a glance is that my class is struggling with the volume of right prisms. I can see that they've answered 362 questions on this standard, and pretty much all of my class is struggling with it. And you can see that detailed here in the red line, which is what caught my eye. So I have 25 of my students are below 50%, and one of my students is in the 50 to 80%. So this is definitely an area where I'm gonna have to work with my students to help them get up to speed. If I click in here, I can get more information. And here I can see exactly what students are below 50, exactly what students are in 50 to 80, and then in this case, there are no students above 80, but if they were, they would show up here. And again, just as we saw in the other report, really easy to assign this to my class. And so in fact, let's do that in this case. Let's assign this standard to everyone that's below 50%. So we'll hit assign standard. And I just want to assign this to my struggling students. And there we go, it starts the assignment for me. So it has automatically selected the right students, automatically selected that standard. We can choose if we want to do all skills in the standard or just select certain ones. I'm going to go with all of the skills. And I want to do 10 questions in this case. And then it's ready to go. I can assign that to my class, and then I can see how they did on that assignment by going back up here to the assignments tab when it's all said and done. Okay, well, let's go back to our math reports. And now let's look at our class grouping report. That's the last one I want to look at together here in math. So we've opened the class grouping report, and this one you can dig into by kind of key concept here. So again, I'm going to look at maybe geometry again. So if I hop in and look at geometry, I can see exactly what level all of my students are practicing at in geometry. So I have some students that are working at a kindergarten level. I have some students that are all the way up here at a 7th grade level. Again, notice the assign standard button to make it really easy. So if I wanted to assign, it looks like Johannes is so far ahead, I don't want him to get bored. I can assign work on this standard to him with the click of a button. If you prefer, you can toggle this to matrix view, and then you just get this kind of in a more visual approach. This is the way that I like to look at it. So I can see really easily that Dwight D. Eisenhower just started. He's at the really first level about naming shapes, but Ella Fitzgerald is all the way up here to 6th grade level about polygon areas. And so what we were looking at here originally was the same level groups, but say that you want to pull small groups to work on this overall domain of geometry together. And so you want some folks that are really strong in geometry and some folks that are earlier on to be working in small groups together. You can do that automatically with just toggling this to mixed level groups, and then Freckle does it for you. So now I have evenly matched mixed level groups where in each group there are some students that are doing really well with geometry and some students that are a bit behind with geometry, so they can help each other. It's pretty neat. And I know I said that was the last math report I wanted to show you, but actually I'm getting kind of excited, and I think I'm talking fast enough that we'll have time. So let's look at this assessments report. So with Freckle, you have the ability, especially if you're on our school edition, to assign benchmark assessments to your class. We really recommend that those are the things that you probably assign, maybe 3 times a year. So the other parts of Freckle you're obviously using every single day. These benchmark assessments are designed so that you can say, how's my class doing with all of the 5th grade domains? And I just want to see how they're growing over time, for example. So once you do those, you can hop in and you'll see there's really kind of in-depth reports here that you get just for benchmark assessments. So here, let me look at my assessment report. Let's see what we get here. Again, keep in mind all of this is obviously fake data for students. And it looks like this is one that my students haven't taken yet, so it's not very helpful. Let me see if we can find one with more data here. Let's look at this assessment report. Let's look at this one. Here we go. So I assigned this assessment to my class. At a glance, it's really easy for me to see who found it really easy and who struggled a little bit. So let me just filter this way. Here I can see my students that had a little bit of a tougher time with it at a glance. And if I want, I can hop in and I can get really detailed information. If I click this, let's just do it really quickly here. And I can see every single question, which ones they got right and which ones they got wrong. Then I can see by key concept, where did my students do well and where did they struggle? It looks like actually pretty even across the board. Then I can look at it by standard. I can see if maybe there was a specific standard that my class is struggling with. Oh, this one looks like an even mix where a good number of my students really struggled and a good number nailed it, and there wasn't a lot in between. And then you can dig into the exact questions. And so you can see if maybe there was just one question that your class struggled with. So let me sort this by accuracy. And this one, only 61% of my class got right. So I can kind of dig in and see who got it right, who got it wrong, and I can even look at the exact question. So tons of information when it comes to our benchmark assessments. Okay, now I want to jump and look at some of the data that's available on the ELA side of things. And so if we go to ELA and we go to reports, here you'll see it really kind of matches a lot of what you've seen on the math side. So we have our report cards for ELA, just like we do for math. Again, great for getting that in-depth information on an individual student. So let's look at Elizabeth's. And see if I toggle this to this year, if we get more data. There we go. So I can see overall her average reading level is at a kind of a second grade level, and she's done 18 articles so far. And here I can see what skills how she's doing with each of the skills. So doing great with author's intent so far, but is struggling a bit with summarizing and main ideas. And if I click in for even more information, I can see the exact articles. And so it looks like she did great with the chocolate article that she was reading at an early reader level, but really struggled with these articles at a third grade level. Just like what you saw in math, really easy to assign this. So if we see that she's struggling with summarizing and main ideas, I can hit the assign button and I can assign articles and questions that are designed to give her more practice around summarizing and main ideas. So this is her reading level on her Freckle articles. And this is where we would see her level on word study, which is another awesome part of Freckle. We don't have time to go into word study right now, but this is where you would see how each student was doing with that. The other report that I'll show you here on ELA that I know that you're gonna love, this is always one of the favorites, is this class grouping report. Just like you saw on math, this is kind of repeated here on the ELA side. So I can see what is the reading level of all of my students. So I see I have a large number of students who are early readers, but I have a few students who are at our 6th grade level, one at a 5th grade level, so I can see it at a glance. And then I can toggle this to by standard, and it looks like I don't have enough data in here yet for that. But this is a great place for you to kind of come in and just see the reading levels for your students at a glance. Okay, with that, we covered a ton of information and we have about 4 minutes left. So let me pause, let me take a drink of water. In the meantime, type in any questions that you have into the questions box of GoToWebinar. And then we will answer them. So just give me 20 seconds here to take a drink and we'll come back and answer the questions. All right, we're back. So I'm seeing a lot of questions around kind of what's the difference between the free teacher edition and the premium school edition? So that's a great question. So at Freckle, we really wholeheartedly believe that we need to have a great free product for teachers to use forever, not a limited time free trial, but a free product that they can rely on. And so we built Freckle with that in mind. And so kind of a lot of what you saw here today is going to be available in the free edition, but you're going to run into some different limitations. And so mainly on the reporting side, the biggest limitation is in most of these reports on the free teacher edition. You can look at data for the current week. So you really need to be on it as a teacher, pulling that data weekly. On the premium school edition, you have really, unlimited access to that growth data. It's really going to depend on the timeframes that are available. So as we are looking here at the math reports, for example, let's look at maybe the performance by standard. So here on school edition, you have access to all of these different options as opposed to just the current week. In general, I would say that if you're brand new to Freckle, getting started with the free teacher edition is a really nice place to start. once you fall in love, which I hope that you will do, and a few other teachers in your school start using us, that's probably when it makes sense to talk with your principal about upgrading your entire school to that school edition. The other question, the other popular question that's coming in is, how does Freckle know how my students are doing on those ELA articles, on those skills? And so let me pull up that report again and I'll show you. If we go to reports, and let's see, let's look at our ELA report cards, and let's jump into one of these students. And let's see if I can find a student with some data. Let's go for this year. Here we go. So we can see that this student is struggling with summarizing and main ideas. And the reason why we know that is when your students are reading their articles in Freckle and answering those reading comprehension questions, there are some reading comprehension questions which are designed to test summarizing and main ideas. There are others designed to test analyzing connections, and others designed to test word meaning and choice, etc. And so if you want to assign work on summarizing and main ideas here, you can hit that assign button. And you can see here, it's only going to show you the articles that have reading comprehension questions, which test summarizing and main ideas. And so it's narrowed down our list of articles here to choose from. And then I can go in, find the article I want, assign it to my students, and be ready to go. All right, as we wrap up here, let me just leave you with my contact information. Sorry, as I'm having trouble finding it on my screen here. There you go. So it's phil@freckle.com. Really, we covered a lot of information and we did it really quickly today because we were just focused on the data and reports. So we didn't really go into all of the idiosyncrasies around how to assign different assignments in Freckle or what the differences are between them. We just looked at kind of the output of the data and how to use that in your classroom. So if you're curious about any of that other stuff, just send me an email. I'm at phil@freckle.com and I would love to help. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your weeks and thank you so much for coming.